This video is covering the main points from the literature review workshop. Its objectives are for you to understand what a literature review is, consider the different types of research, the importance of the research question, and to look at the process of writing the review and the skills required. According to the Royal Literary Fund, a literature review has 4 objectives: to survey literature, synthesise that information, critically analyse the information, and present it in an organised way. A literature review may be a standalone assignment, or it may be part of a wider piece of primary research that you're carrying out. A literature review reviews pieces of research to explore the view that is emerging from that research. The reviewer can consider whether all of those individual pieces of research come to a consensus, or whether there's controversy about that subject. There are 2 different types of research, primary and secondary, and a literature review is a type of secondary research. To clarify their definitions, primary research is data that's already been collected by individual researchers or groups of researchers who have generated that data via their research project, but then secondary is when there is a review of previously collected data. So while you're watching this video, there are thousands of pieces of research being carried out around the globe, all of which are going to make up the body of evidence available to us once they are published. Some of these are really big studies, some of them are tiny, some are qualitative and some quantitative, and of course they'll be around the world, some here in the UK and then some overseas. Quantitative data is numerical data that is generally statistically analysed, whereas qualitative data is non-numerical, and this is either narratively or thematically analysed. So academic sources such as research papers, journal articles, conference papers can be reviewed, but also grey literature, which is anything that's not published by a commercial publisher. This also includes government reports and business reports, if those are relevant to your study. And what's the point of doing the literature review? It's to find out whether the findings of a range of studies are consistent, can we trust that evidence, and to find out how well things work. But it could also be to discover if an intervention works across a range of subgroups, or to highlight weaknesses or gaps in the evidence. So what skills do you need in order to carry out a literature review? You need to be able to think critically. You need to have information literacy, be able to take notes, read academically, search for literature effectively. You need to be able to do academic writing to a high level, as well as critical appraisal and critical analysis, citing and referencing, and proofreading. And so how do you do the literature review? There is a process which you can follow, but this isn't one of those processes where you do the first one and then when you've finished it, you start the next one. There is overlap between these, and you'll find that you'll need to be working on several of these processes at once. For example, it's a good idea to keep searching for new literature while you're writing your literature review, while you're going through that process. Because then if new research is published, you're going to be able to bring that into your review. Setting your research question is really important. It needs to not be too broad or too narrow. It needs to be a focused and specific question. And then it's important to always agree that final question with your supervisor before you proceed. Now, it's not going to be possible for you to look at every single piece of research about your chosen subject. So you need to decide inclusion and exclusion criteria. What are you going to include and what are you going to exclude? This could be things such as the country of origin. You might decide to exclude all research that's taken part outside of the UK. Or you might decide to include a certain population group. Making these decisions and keeping to them will mean that you will have a more manageable amount of research to review. And because of this, it's important to start with a scoping search to see what's out there, how much research is there on this topic. You might then see that there's thousands and thousands of papers on this topic. So you're going to need to consider those exclusion criteria in order to reduce that. Or you might realise that actually there's not very much at all, and you may need to open out your research topic so that it is broader in order to have enough evidence to review. Now, once you've got your papers and you're reviewing them, it's important to find an efficient way of recording that information. So the image here is of a table where you can make notes about the different points related to a particular article. This is one sheet per article, and you put the details in and then make your notes. You could also do this by creating a table in Excel and putting the details of all of the articles within a table. Now, once you've read all the papers and you've made your notes, you need to start presenting the findings. So once you've read all the research, you will know what the main thing is that they all say. So that will become your first theme. And then what's the next thing that they all say? That's theme 2. And then what third point is made by the literature? That's theme 3. And then that will enable you to present those findings in that order. When you're presenting your findings, comment on them. Are these findings conclusive? Is there enough evidence? Is this research rigorous enough? Or are there issues with how the research methods were implemented? And what recommendations were made, and what would you recommend following looking at this research? You may be able to use a checklist, a critical analysis checklist, to enable you to sort of have some benchmarks across all the different papers. CASP checklists are often used by health students, but there are a range of different critical appraisal tools like this that might be more applicable to your subject. So when you write up your literature review, it will need to have a strong structure. And this is an example structure that you might find useful. Check your assignment brief to find out what structure your literature review needs to have. So first of all, there is an introduction. This tells your reader why this is an important topic to research. It sets the scene and gives a context for your research. And it tells the reader precisely what you're looking at and why. You need to be really clear about this. Tell the reader why you chose to investigate this particular topic. So after you've introduced the topic and set the background, you need to explain how you carried out your review. So you need to explain how you found those articles. What search terms did you use? What databases did you search to find them? What inclusion and exclusion criteria did you apply? And then how did you decide on the final papers that you were going to include? You will particularly need information about how you applied your inclusion and exclusion criteria, because you need to be able to justify your decisions about choosing the literature that you did select. And then the next section is your findings, where you discuss the literature that you have chosen. This is where you explain what you found out and indicate what's the current thinking in that subject. You can organise this part in sections about the different points that you need to make. So what have you learned about the first point? What does all the literature say? Is there agreement, or are there any disagreements? Is there any controversy? What do you conclude? And then go on to the next point, and so on. So as you're doing this, it's important to be critical of the literature, because this demonstrates your critical thinking skills. Now, these comments can be positive or negative. This list here demonstrates the range of different issues that you could make critical points about. Once you've discussed your findings, you need to come to a conclusion about what you've learnt and make some recommendations for the future. So summarise what you have discovered from reviewing the literature. Perhaps this is a strong conclusion, or maybe more research needs to be done, and you can make a recommendation about that. And finally, of course, you need a reference list that's formatted in the style recommended by your subject area. If relevant, you may also have an appendix where you have put material that didn't need to be in the body of the assignment, but that you want your reader to be aware of. For example, you might have a table with all of your search terms in the appendix, but may summarise that within your methodology section. To summarise, therefore, your literature review needs to have an introduction, you need to explain your methodology, you need to explore your findings and discuss them in point order, theme order. You need to make a conclusion before listing your references, and then an appendix if appropriate. Visit our literature review guide for more information on producing a literature review, and good luck with your reviewing.